I stood on the sidewalk outside my son's house in Greenwich, Connecticut, holding a $200 birthday cake from that French patisserie Daniel loved, the one where they make everything with imported butter and real Madagascar vanilla. The gift box under my other arm was wrapped in that handmade Italian paper I'd ordered specially. Inside was a vintage Rolex I'd found at an estate sale, the exact model Richard used to wear. Daniel's 32nd birthday, my only child's birthday. And the wrought iron gate between us was locked. Bethany stood on the other side, her hand gripping the gate so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Her hair was falling out of what had probably started as a ponytail that morning, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide anymore. She looked exhausted. She looked furious. She looked like she was about to explode. "De novo non, Vivienne." Her voice came out as a strangled shout that made me flinch. She'd never yelled at me before. 4 years of tension, 4 years of increasingly cold interactions, but never yelling. "Já disse 1000 vezes que domingo é dia de descanso desta família." I tried to keep my voice steady, reasonable. "Bethany, it's Daniel's birthday. I just want to see my son for a few minutes. I brought his favorite cake. I have a gift." "You were here Tuesday," she cut me off, her voice rising even higher. "You were here Thursday. You came by Saturday afternoon without calling. I can't do this anymore. I can't." There were tears in her eyes now, but they looked like angry tears, frustrated tears. "Domingo é nosso único dia de paz. The one day I don't have to work 50 hours with screaming children. The one day I can actually breathe in my own house without you reorganizing my kitchen or criticizing how I dress Sophie or offering money for things we don't want." "I'm his mother," I said, and I hated how my voice shook. "I raised him for 32 years. I don't need an appointment to see my own son." "Yes, you do." Bethany's face was red now, splotchy with emotion. "You absolutely do, because this is my house, my family, and my one day to not feel like I'm being watched and judged every single second." From somewhere inside the house, I could hear Sophie crying. My 2-year-old granddaughter, probably frightened by her mother's shouting. I wanted to push past Bethany, to go comfort Sophie, to see Daniel, who must have heard all this commotion. But Bethany's body was blocking the narrow opening in the gate, and her eyes held something I'd never seen directed at me before. Not just anger. Hatred. "Bethany, please. It's his birthday. Just let me know." The word came out flat. Final. "Go home, Vivienne. Go home and leave us alone." And then she pushed the gate closed. The metallic clang as it locked echoed down the quiet street, and I saw curtains moving in the neighbors' windows. They were watching. Everyone was watching as Bethany Chen Marlowe locked her mother-in-law out of her own son's birthday celebration. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, cake still in my hands, gift box slipping down my arm. Then I turned and walked back to my Mercedes. My hands were shaking so badly I had trouble getting the key in the ignition. The cake toppled over when I set it on the passenger seat, chocolate ganache probably smearing the leather I'd just had detailed for $800. I didn't care. The tears came before I even left their street. Not delicate tears, not the kind of crying I'd learned to do at Richard's funeral, where I had to maintain dignity in front of 300 business associates. These were ugly tears, the kind that made my whole body shake, the kind that made my throat hurt and my nose run. I had to pull over twice on the drive back to my house because I couldn't see the road through the blur. By the time I got home to my 5-bedroom colonial, the sun was setting. The house was dark and empty. It had been dark and empty for 6 years, ever since Richard's heart attack. 6 years of rattling around in rooms that used to be filled with Daniel's laughter, with Richard's terrible singing in the shower, with life. Now it was just me and the cleaning service that came every Tuesday. I left the cake in the car, left the gift too, went straight to my bedroom and lay down on top of the covers, still in my cashmere sweater and wool slacks, and stared at the ceiling until the room went completely dark. My phone sat silent on the nightstand. I'd called Daniel 23 times on the drive home. Not once had he answered. Not once had he called back. Around 10 p.m., I sent him a text message. My fingers were steadier by then, steady enough to type what needed to be said. Your father would be ashamed to see how you let that woman treat me. I watched the screen. The 3 little dots appeared, showing he was typing. They blinked for maybe 15 seconds. Then they disappeared. No response came. That was Sunday. Monday, I canceled lunch with Patricia and Eleanor at the club. Tuesday, I ignored Jennifer's calls about the charity gala committee. Wednesday, I didn't go to my Pilates class. I stayed in the house and replayed that scene at the gate over and over in my mind. The way Bethany's face had twisted with anger. The way she'd said, "De novo no," like I was some kind of pest, some irritating insect she needed to swat away. The way that gate had clanged shut. I'd given Daniel everything. Private school education at Choate, $70,000 a year, Princeton for undergrad, another $280,000, Columbia for his master's in architecture. Richard and I had paid for all of it, never asking him to take a single loan. When he wanted to buy his first car, we bought it. When he needed help with the down payment on that house in Greenwich, we gave him $150,000, no strings attached. When he married Bethany, in that modest ceremony that was so far beneath what a Marlowe wedding should have been, I wrote a check for $35,000 to send them to Tuscany for 3 weeks because I wanted my son to have a proper honeymoon, even if his bride's family couldn't afford one. And now I needed an appointment. Now I needed permission. Now Sunday was sacred family time that didn't include the woman who'd sacrificed everything to give Daniel the life he had. Thursday morning, I sat in Richard's study, the room I'd barely touched since he died. His desk was exactly as he'd left it, papers still in neat stacks, his favorite fountain pen still in the holder. I picked up the phone and called our attorney, Marcus Whitfield. We'd used Marcus for 30 years, for everything from the business sale to our estate planning. Vivian, his voice was warm, concerned. He'd heard about Richard's death, had handled the legal aftermath. How are you? I haven't heard from you in months. I need to update my will, I said. No pleasantries, no small talk. I want Daniel to receive 60% of my estate. 30% should go into an irrevocable trust for my granddaughter Sophie, with terms that Bethany cannot access those funds under any circumstances. 10% to charity, your choice of organizations. There was a pause. Vivienne, your current will leaves everything to Daniel directly. This is a significant change. Maybe we should discuss— I don't want to discuss anything, I interrupted. I want you to draft the documents. I'll come in next week to sign them. May I ask what prompted this? I looked at Richard's photograph on the desk, the 2 of us at some gala or another, both of us in black tie, both of us smiling like we owned the world, which in a way, we had. My daughter-in-law has made it very clear that I'm not family. I'm making sure she knows exactly where she stands financially. If they divorce, she gets nothing. If Daniel predeceases her, she gets nothing. The money I worked 30 years to build stays in Marlowe hands. Marcus sighed. I'll draft the documents. But Vivian, family conflicts and estate planning don't always mix well. Sometimes these decisions made in anger. I'm not angry, I said, and I wasn't. I was something colder than anger, something harder. I'm protecting my legacy. I'll expect the documents by Tuesday. Thursday afternoon, my phone was still silent. No calls from Daniel, no texts, no, Mom, we need to talk, or I'm sorry about Sunday. Nothing. I sat in my living room with a glass of Chardonnay I wasn't drinking and watched the light change through the windows. This was my life now. This was what it had come to. That evening, around 6, my phone finally rang. My heart jumped. I grabbed it so fast I almost dropped it. Daniel's name on the screen. Finally, he was calling to apologize, to explain, to tell me that Bethany had overreacted, and of course I was always welcome. Of course I was family. Daniel, honey, I started. Mom. His voice wasn't warm. It was tight, controlled, the voice he used when he was trying not to lose his temper. We need to talk about boundaries. That word, boundaries. I'd heard it so many times from Bethany, and now Daniel was using it too. What about Sunday? I asked. Are we going to talk about how your wife humiliated me in front of your entire neighborhood? She's exhausted, Mom. She works 60-hour weeks with special needs kids who bite and kick and scream. She comes home to a 2-year-old who's in the terrible twos. And you show up 3-4 times a week without calling, without asking, and you don't seem to understand that she needs space. I'm your mother. My voice came out sharper than I intended. I don't need an appointment to see my son. Yes, you do. He said it so simply, so matter-of-factly. You do need to call ahead. You do need to ask if it's a good time. You do need to respect that Bethany and I have our own life, our own family, and we need boundaries. There was that word again. Since when am I not part of your family? You are. But Mom, you can't just show up whenever you want. You can't buy Sophie gifts after we specifically told you not to. You can't criticize how Bethany dresses our daughter or runs our household. You can't. He stopped, took a breath. It's too much. It's killing my marriage. Bethany is talking about couples therapy. She's talking about separation. And I can't lose my wife because my mother won't respect simple boundaries. Something cold settled in my chest. So you're choosing her. Mom, don't. You're choosing the woman you've known for 6 years over the mother who gave you everything for 32 years. That's not fair. His voice cracked slightly. This isn't about choosing. This is about healthy relationships. This is about respect. Respect, I repeated. Your wife locked a gate in my face. She screamed at me like I was a stranger. That's respect? You showed up for the 4th time that week. Daniel's voice rose. On our one day to rest, without calling, again, after we'd asked you repeatedly to please give us space on Sundays. It was your birthday. I know. He sounded tired now, defeated. I know it was, and I wanted to see you. But Mom, Bethany is at her breaking point. I'm at my breaking point. If you can't respect our boundaries, I don't know what's going to happen to this family. I opened my mouth to respond, but he kept talking. I need you to promise me something. Promise me you'll call before coming over. Promise me you'll limit visits to once, maybe twice a week. Promise me you'll respect Bethany's decisions about Sophie. Can you promise me that? And if I can't? The words came out before I could stop them. What if I can't just sit in this empty house and wait for permission to see my own son? The silence stretched so long, I thought he'd hung up. Then quietly, then I don't know what happens, Mom. I really don't. He did hang up then. I sat listening to the dial tone for a full minute before setting the phone down. 3 days. 3 days of silence after that conversation. I didn't call him. He didn't call me. I moved through my house like a ghost, room to room, touching things. Richard's books, Daniel's childhood photos on the mantel, the antique vase I'd bought at auction for $12,000 that sat in the foyer gathering dust. All these beautiful things, all this space, all this money, and for what? Saturday night, I sat in bed scrolling through photos on my phone. Daniel at 8, missing his 2 front teeth, grinning at his birthday party. Daniel at 16, in his chote blazer, looking so grown up. Daniel at his wedding 4 years ago, Bethany beside him in a dress that cost less than my monthly car payment, both of them glowing. That was when it started to go wrong. That was when I started to lose him. Sunday morning, 1 week after the gate incident, I woke up determined to try again. I would call first. I would ask permission. I would do what they wanted. I picked up my phone at 9 a.m., dialed Daniel's number. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Voicemail. Again at noon. Voicemail. By evening, I understood. He was avoiding me. My own son was avoiding my calls. That's when the pain turned into something else, something harder, colder. something that felt almost like peace. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday passed. I went back to my normal life, or at least the motions of it. Lunch with the ladies, Pilates class, a meeting about the hospital fundraiser. Everyone asked about Daniel and Sophie. I smiled and said they were wonderful, just wonderful, so busy with their little family. No one needed to know that I hadn't seen my granddaughter in 12 days. No one needed to know that my son was erasing me from his life, one ignored phone call at a time. Wednesday night, I sat in my study reviewing some investment statements. The market had been good to me. Between Richard's life insurance, the sale of our consulting firm, and smart investments over the past 6 years, my net worth sat comfortably at $4.2 million. The house was paid off, worth another $1.5 million. I had more money than I could ever spend, and I had no one to spend it with. My phone rang at 10:47 p.m. I was already in bed, reading a novel I couldn't focus on. The screen lit up with Bethany's name. Bethany. Calling me at almost 11 at night. For a wild second, I thought maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe she'd realized how cruel she'd been. Maybe Daniel had finally stood up to her. I answered. Hello? Vivian. Her voice was wrong, panicked, breathless. Vivian, please, please don't hang up. I know you're angry. I know you hate me right now. But please, I need help. I sat up straighter. What's wrong? My car broke down. I'm on Route 95, mile marker 32. It's completely dead. There's no one here. It's dark. Sophie is with me. She's crying. She's scared. It's getting cold. I tried calling Daniel, but he's on a flight to Chicago for work. His phone is off. I tried roadside assistance, but they said it'll be 2 hours minimum. I don't have anyone else to call. Please. I know you have every right to say no, but please, it's Sophie. She's freezing. I'm scared. Please. I could hear it in the background. Sophie's little voice crying, Mama, Mama, with that particular tone that meant she was genuinely frightened. My granddaughter, my Daniel's baby, alone on a dark highway with a mother who'd humiliated me, who'd locked me out, who'd told me I wasn't wanted. My finger hovered over the red button. End call. So easy. Just press it. Let Bethany sit in her dead car on that dark road. Let her wait 2 hours for help. Let her understand what it feels like to be shut out, to be rejected, to have a door closed in your face. Please, Bethany whispered again. I'm begging you. I know I was horrible. I know I hurt you. But please, for Sophie, please help us. I listened to my granddaughter crying. I thought about Sunday, about that gate, about Bethany's face twisted with anger. I thought about 11 days of silence, of ignored phone calls, of my son choosing his wife over his mother. And I pressed the red button. The call ended. The room went quiet. I sat there for maybe 5 seconds, phone still in my hand, waiting for guilt to hit me, waiting for shame, waiting for regret. Nothing came. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in 12 days, something that felt almost like satisfaction. My phone rang again. Bethany. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. It rang again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Then I did something I'd never done before. I blocked her number, just pressed the button and made her disappear from my phone entirely. I turned off my light and lay back down. Tomorrow I'd deal with whatever came next. Tonight, for the first time in almost 2 weeks, I fell asleep easily. I need to go back. I need to explain how I became the kind of woman who could hang up on a terrified daughter-in-law stranded with a crying toddler on a dark highway. Because 6 years ago, I wasn't that woman. 6 years ago, I was Vivian Marlowe, wife of Richard Marlowe, co-founder of Marlowe Strategic Consultants, mother to Daniel. And I thought I understood exactly who I was and what my life would look like for the next 30 years. Richard died on a Tuesday, March 15th. We'd just sold the consulting firm we'd built together over 28 years for $8 million. The closing had been the previous Friday. We'd celebrated with champagne, made plans to travel, talked about finally taking that 6-month trip through Southeast Asia we'd been postponing since our 30s. He was 61. I was 51. We had decades ahead of us. Tuesday morning, he went for his usual run. 5 miles, same route he'd been doing for 15 years. He made it 3 miles before the massive coronary hit him. A jogger found him on the sidewalk at 6:47 a.m. The paramedics said he was probably dead before he hit the ground. They said he didn't suffer. They said it like that was supposed to make it better. The funeral was enormous. 300 people from the business world, former clients, competitors, colleagues. Daniel flew in from New York immediately, 26 years old and trying so hard to be strong for me. He held my hand through the service. He stayed with me for a week after, sleeping in his old bedroom, making sure I ate, making sure I got out of bed every morning. When he finally went back to his life in Manhattan, back to his architecture firm and his small apartment in Brooklyn, the house became a mausoleum. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, gourmet kitchen, library, Richard's study. All of it empty, all of it echoing with absence. I started visiting Daniel every weekend. Friday night, I'd drive the hour and a half to Brooklyn, take him to dinner at expensive restaurants he couldn't afford on his junior architect's salary. Saturday, we'd go to museums or walk through Central Park. Sunday morning, I'd drive home. It felt good, having something to do, someone to take care of. Daniel was all I had left. This went on for 8 months. Then Daniel called me one Thursday evening, November, and said he had news. He'd met someone. Her name was Bethany Chen. She was a pediatric occupational therapist. They'd been dating for 3 months, and it was getting serious. He wanted me to meet her. I said yes, of course. I said I was happy for him. I bought a new outfit for the dinner, spent $200 on a cashmere sweater and wool slacks. Made reservations at Per Se, the kind of place where dinner costs $400 per person. Bethany showed up in a simple black dress that probably came from somewhere like Target. No jewelry except small silver earrings. Her handshake was firm, but her palms were slightly sweaty. She was nervous. 25 years old, daughter of Chinese immigrants who ran a laundry service in Queens. She'd put herself through school on scholarships and 3 part-time jobs. She spoke carefully, choosing her words precisely. Like English might not have been her first language, even though I learned later she was born in New York. I tried to like her. I really did. She was clearly intelligent, clearly dedicated to her work with special needs children. Daniel looked at her the way Richard used to look at me in those early years before the business consumed everything. But there was something about her that made me uncomfortable. Maybe it was how quiet she was, how she let Daniel order for her, how she seemed almost intimidated by the restaurant's grandeur. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe it was just that she was taking my son away. They got engaged 6 months later. Daniel called to tell me before he proposed, asked for my blessing. I gave it. What else could I do? He was 27, old enough to make his own decisions. The wedding was small, 75 people at a community center in Queens. Bethany's family couldn't afford anything elaborate. Daniel said he wanted it small anyway, intimate. I wrote a check for $35,000 for their honeymoon in Tuscany because I couldn't stand the thought of my son having some budget vacation to celebrate his marriage. That's when the visits started increasing. After the wedding, after they moved into an apartment in Astoria together, I found myself driving to New York more often. Once a week became twice a week. I'd bring groceries, expensive things they couldn't afford on their combined salaries. Organic produce, good wine, steaks from the butcher I used. Bethany would thank me politely, but I could see something in her eyes. Discomfort, maybe. Or resentment. Daniel took a job at a firm in Connecticut a year after the wedding. Better money, better projects. They found a house in Greenwich, a modest 3-bedroom that needed work. The down payment was $190,000. They had $30,000 saved. I gave them $150,000. Daniel tried to refuse it. Mom, that's too much. We can take a bigger mortgage. But I insisted. I wanted my son in a good house, in a good neighborhood, and honestly, I wanted him closer to me. Connecticut was 40 minutes from my house. I could see him more easily. Bethany was pregnant within 6 months of the move. Sophie was born 2 years ago, March 20th. I was in the delivery room because Daniel asked me to be there. Bethany's mother was there too, a tiny woman who barely spoke English, clutching a rosary and praying in Cantonese. When Sophie came out, perfect and screaming, I felt something shift in my chest. My granddaughter. Richard's granddaughter, even though he'd never meet her. That's when things started changing between Bethany and me. Or maybe they'd been changing all along and I just hadn't noticed. I started visiting 3-4 times a week. I'd bring gifts for Sophie, expensive things. Designer baby clothes, educational toys, books. Bethany would say thank you, but her smile got tighter each time. Once, I arrived to find Sophie wearing a onesie from Target, $15, when I'd bought her a $100 outfit from Bergdorf's. She spit up on the other one, Bethany said, but I could tell she just preferred dressing Sophie in cheap clothes. I'd reorganize things while I was there. Bethany's kitchen was chaos, bottles and sippy cups everywhere, baby food jars mixed in with regular groceries. I'd put everything in order, create systems. Bethany would come home from work and I'd show her what I'd done. She'd say thank you. But her voice got quieter each time. 6 months ago, Bethany asked me to sit down for a conversation. Just the two of us, while Daniel was putting Sophie down for a nap. She made tea, sat across from me at her kitchen table, and said, "Vivian, we need to talk about boundaries." That word. I heard it for the first time 6 months ago, and I've heard it 100 times since. She said she appreciated my help. She said she knew I loved Sophie and Daniel, but she needed space. She needed to feel like her house was her own. She needed Sundays to be family time, just the 3 of them. She asked if I could please call before coming over. She asked if I could limit visits to once or twice a week maximum. She said it like she was asking for something reasonable. I said I'd try. But the next Tuesday, I was driving home from a doctor's appointment, and I was near their house, and I had a bag of organic baby food Sophie loved, so I stopped by. Bethany opened the door in her pajamas at 2 in the afternoon. She'd been napping because she'd worked a 13-hour shift the night before. The look on her face when she saw me standing there made me feel like an intruder in my own son's house. The incidents piled up. I bought Sophie a tablet for Christmas, one of those educational ones designed for toddlers. $400. Bethany had specifically told me not to buy it, said she didn't want Sophie having screen time at 2 years old. But I bought it anyway because I thought I knew better. When Sophie opened it on Christmas morning, Bethany's face went white. Daniel pulled me aside later, asked me why I'd gone against their wishes. I said children need technology early to stay competitive. He said it wasn't about that. It was about respect. Last month, I showed up on a Sunday afternoon. I'd called that morning, but no one answered, so I assumed it was fine to come by. When I got there, all the curtains were drawn. I rang the doorbell 4 times before Daniel answered, hair messy, looking exhausted. He told me they'd been up all night with Sophie, who had an ear infection. They were trying to nap, but I was already there, so I came in. I'd brought soup, homemade by my chef. Bethany came downstairs 20 minutes later, saw me sitting in her living room with Sophie on my lap, and just turned around and went back upstairs without saying a word. That night, Daniel called me. He said Bethany had cried for an hour. She felt like her home wasn't her own anymore. She felt watched, judged, invaded. He begged me to please respect their boundaries. I said I would. I meant it when I said it. But then 3 days would pass, and I'd be sitting in my empty house, and I'd think about Sophie growing up without really knowing me, and I'd get in my car, just to drop something off, just to say hi, just for 10 minutes. And every time, I could see Bethany's face get a little tighter, a little colder. 2 weeks before the gate incident, Bethany called me at 11 at night. Her voice was shaking. She said she needed to tell me something. Woman to woman, mother to mother. She said she was seeing a therapist. She said she was having anxiety attacks. She said between her job with special needs children who bit and scratched and screamed, and taking care of a 2-year-old and feeling like her mother-in-law was constantly watching and criticizing everything she did, she was breaking. She asked me to please give her space. She said she didn't hate me. She said she knew I meant well, but she was drowning. I told her I understood. I told her I'd back off. I said I was sorry if I'd made things difficult, and I meant it. In that moment, hearing the desperation in her voice, I genuinely meant it. But Saturday, 2 days before Daniel's birthday, I found myself driving to their house. I'd bought a gift for Daniel early, that vintage Rolex, and I wanted to see his face when he opened it. I didn't call first. I just went. When I got there, Bethany answered the door with Sophie on her hip. She looked at me, looked at the gift box in my hands, and something in her face just collapsed. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I really can't." Then she closed the door, not slammed it, just closed it, very gently. I stood there for a full minute before leaving. That was Saturday. Sunday was Daniel's birthday. Sunday was when I went back with the cake and the gate and everything that came after. Now it's Wednesday night, 11 days since that gate closed in my face, and I'm lying in bed having just hung up on my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter stranded on a dark highway. And the strangest thing is, I don't feel like a monster. I feel like I've finally set a boundary of my own. I woke up Thursday morning to 17 missed calls, 12 from unknown numbers, 5 from Daniel, no voicemails, just the missed call notifications lined up on my screen like accusations. I made coffee, took my time with breakfast, checked my emails, responded to Patricia's message about the charity gala. It was 9:30 before I finally listened to the voicemails Daniel had left. The first one, from 11:53 the night before, his voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "Mom, Bethany said she called you. She said you hung up on her. Please tell me that's not true. Please call me back. She's still on the highway. Sophie is terrified. I can't reach them. I'm on a plane. Please, Mom, please just call me back." The second one, 12:47 a.m. His voice had changed. The panic was still there, but underneath it was something else. Anger. "I got through to Bethany from a borrowed phone. She told me you blocked her number. She told me she begged you for help, and you hung up and blocked her. What the hell is wrong with you? That's my daughter out there. That's my wife. How could you do this?" The third one, 1:32 a.m. Exhaustion now, and something that sounded like defeat. "I hired a private towing service. Cost me $800 to get them off that highway." Sophie screamed for 40 minutes straight. "Bethany won't stop crying. I'm still on this plane for another 2 hours. Mom, I don't understand. I don't understand how you could do this. Call me back. We need to talk." I deleted all 3 voicemails and blocked Daniel's number too. The silence that followed was profound. For the first time in weeks, my phone stayed quiet. No calls, no texts, no demands on my time or my attention or my emotions. I went to my Pilates class, had lunch at the club with Eleanor and Patricia. They asked about Daniel and Sophie. I said they were wonderful, just wonderful, so busy with their young family. Neither of them needed to know that I'd just excommunicated myself from that family entirely. Friday morning, I drove to Marcus Whitfield's office to sign the updated will. He had the documents ready, but his expression was concerned as he slid them across his mahogany desk. "Viviane, I need to ask one more time. Are you absolutely certain about these changes?" I picked up the pen, platinum Mont Blanc that had been Richard's. "Completely certain. Cutting Bethany out entirely, even if she remains married to Daniel, it's going to create significant family tension. And these trust provisions for Sophie are very restrictive. Bethany won't be able to access those funds even for legitimate expenses." "That's exactly the point," I interrupted. "The money stays in Marlowe hands. Bethany has made it abundantly clear that she doesn't consider herself part of this family. I'm simply codifying what she's already decided." Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying me. We'd known each other for 30 years. He'd handled the paperwork when Richard and I bought our first office space, when we incorporated the business, when we sold it. He'd drafted Richard's will, had held my hand through the legal aftermath of his death. He knew me. "What happened, Vivian?" His voice was gentle. "2 months ago, you were showing me pictures of Sophie. You were talking about setting up a college fund. Now you're essentially writing Bethany out of your son's inheritance. What changed?" I signed the first page, then the second, then the third. She locked a gate in my face. She told me I needed permission to see my own son. And when she needed help, when she was stranded and scared and begging me to rescue her, I gave her exactly what she's been asking for all along. Space. You hung up on her. Marcus's eyebrows rose. Daniel's wife called you in an emergency and you hung up? She had roadside assistance. She was never in actual danger. I signed the last page, slid the documents back across the desk. She just wanted me to be the one to rescue her. Wanted me to prove that I'd come running whenever she called. But I'm done running. I'm done begging for scraps of time with my own family. If Bethany wants boundaries, she can have them. Permanent ones. Marcus gathered the papers, slipped them into a folder. "I hope you know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing." I stood, picked up my handbag. I'm protecting myself. Finally. The weekend was quiet. Saturday, I met Jennifer for lunch. Sunday, I stayed home and read a book I'd been trying to finish for 6 months. No visits to Daniel's house, no standing on sidewalks with birthday cakes, no gates closing in my face. It felt strange, that emptiness, but it also felt like relief. Monday morning, my doorbell rang at 7:45. I was still in my robe, coffee cup in hand. Through the peephole, I saw Daniel standing on my front steps. He was in a suit, probably on his way to work, but his tie was crooked and there were dark circles under his eyes that made him look older than 32. I opened the door. We stared at each other for a long moment. "Can I come in?" His voice was flat, emotionless. I stepped aside. He walked past me into the foyer, stood looking at Richard's portrait on the wall. The one we'd commissioned for our 20th anniversary, oil painting, Richard in a navy suit looking distinguished and successful. Daniel stood there staring at it like he was trying to find answers in his dead father's painted face. "Coffee?" I asked. "No." He turned to face me. "I came to ask you a question, just one question. Why?" "Why what?" "Why did you hang up on Bethany?" His voice stayed flat, but his hands were shaking. "Why did you leave your granddaughter crying on a dark highway? Why did you block both our numbers? Why are you doing this?" I set my coffee cup down on the hall table, very carefully. "Because I'm tired, Daniel. I'm tired of being treated like an intruder. I'm tired of needing permission to see you. I'm tired of being punished for loving you too much." "Loving me too much?" His voice rose. "You call that love? Leaving my wife and daughter stranded because you're angry about boundaries?" "She screamed at me," I said quietly. "On your birthday, on the sidewalk, in front of your neighbors. She locked a gate in my face. She told me I wasn't welcome in your home. So when she called begging for help, I simply gave her what she'd been demanding. Distance." Daniel's face went red. "That's not the same thing, and you know it. She was asking for space, for reasonable limits. You escalated to abandonment, to cruelty. Is it cruel to respect her wishes?" I kept my voice calm, reasonable. "She said she didn't want me around. I'm not around. She established boundaries. I'm respecting them. By blocking our phone numbers, by making it impossible for us to reach you." He pulled out his phone, started scrolling. "Do you know what happened that night? Do you want to know?" "I assume roadside assistance came. After 2.5 hours. He cut me off, voice shaking. 2.5 hours in a dead car on the side of a highway with a 2-year-old who was hysterical. The heat stopped working. It was 48 degrees outside. Sophie was wearing a light jacket because we were just supposed to be driving home from her pediatrician appointment. She was so cold, Vivian. She was shaking and crying and asking why nobody would help us. Something twisted in my chest, but I pushed it down. Bethany had a phone. She could have called. Who? Daniel shouted. Her parents don't have a car. Her friends were all at work. I was unreachable on a plane. You were the only person she could think of who had the means and the time to help. And you hung up on her. You hung up on your granddaughter. I hung up on the woman who's been pushing me out of your life for 4 years, I said, and my voice wasn't calm anymore. The woman who treats me like I'm toxic, who acts like every visit is an invasion, who makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong by wanting to see my son. Because you don't respect limits, Daniel's voice cracked. Because we tell you not to come on Sundays and you show up on Sundays. We tell you not to buy certain gifts and you buy them anyway. We ask you to call ahead and you just appear, over and over and over. And when we finally desperately try to enforce the smallest boundary, you act like we're attacking you. I raised you for 32 years, I said, and tears were coming now, hot, angry tears. I gave you everything, private school, college, graduate school. I paid for your wedding, your honeymoon, your house down payment. I've never asked you for anything except the right to be part of your life. And she took that away. She took you away. No, Mom. Daniel's voice went quiet. You pushed us away. With every ignored boundary, every dismissed request, every time you chose your wants over our needs. You pushed us so hard that Bethany had a panic attack in the grocery store last month. You pushed us so hard that I'm on anti-anxiety medication for the first time in my life. You pushed us so hard that my marriage is falling apart. The silence that followed was crushing. I could hear the antique clock ticking in the living room, the sound of a car passing outside, my own heartbeat loud in my ears. Your marriage is falling apart because you chose someone who doesn't understand family loyalty, I finally said. Someone who thinks mothers should make appointments to see their children. Daniel laughed, but it was a broken sound. You really don't see it, do you? You really think you're the victim here. I am the victim. I'm the one who got a gate closed in her face. After showing up 4 times in 1 week, Daniel's voice rose again. After being asked repeatedly to give us space. After ignoring every single request we made. Yes, Bethany snapped. Yes, she shouldn't have yelled at you on the sidewalk. But Mom, you broke her first. You broke us first. Then I guess we're all broken, I said flatly. And maybe it's better if we stay broken. You and Bethany can have all the space you want. You can have your Sundays, your privacy, your boundaries. You can raise Sophie without interference from the grandmother who apparently only causes damage. I'll stay here in my house with my money and my memories, and I won't bother you anymore. Is that what you want? Daniel asked, and he sounded genuinely confused. You want to cut us out of your life completely? Over this? You cut me out first, I said. I'm just making it official. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Set it on the hall table next to my coffee cup. Bethany wrote you a letter. She wrote it Thursday morning after she finally stopped crying. She wanted to try to explain, to apologize for yelling at you, to ask if we could find a way to fix this. She was going to mail it, but I said I'd deliver it in person. He looked at the envelope, then at me. I don't think there's any point now. He walked to the door, hand on the knob. Then he paused. Dad would be ashamed of you. Not for the reasons you think. He'd be ashamed that you let anger turn you into someone who could abandon a terrified child on a highway. Someone who could weaponize love into control. Someone who would rather be right than be family. Don't you dare, I whispered. Don't you dare tell me what your father would think. He told me once, Daniel said, still facing the door. Right before he died. We were having lunch, just the 2 of us. He said the business had taken too much of his time, too much of his energy. He said he'd missed things with me, important things, because he was always working. He said he regretted it. He said he hoped I'd be smarter than him, that I'd put family first, that I'd create boundaries between work and home life. Daniel turned to look at me. He understood boundaries, Mom. He valued them. He would have understood what Bethany was asking for, and he would have been horrified by what you did Wednesday night. Then he left. The door closed with a soft click that was somehow worse than if he'd slammed it. I stood in the foyer for a long time, staring at that envelope. Bethany's handwriting on the front, neat and precise. Mrs. Marlowe in blue ink. I picked it up, walked to the kitchen, and dropped it in the trash without opening it. The rest of Monday passed in a blur. I canceled my afternoon plans, stayed home, moved through rooms without purpose. The house was so quiet. It had always been quiet since Richard died, but now it felt different. Now it felt like a choice. Like I'd chosen this silence, this emptiness, this profound isolation. Tuesday morning, Eleanor called. "Vivian, darling, I ran into Daniel's colleague yesterday. He mentioned Daniel's been under terrible stress. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," I lied. "Just busy with work, you know how it is." "Well, we miss seeing you with little Sophie at the club. You haven't brought her for weeks. When's the next visit?" "Soon," I said. "Very soon." I hung up and stared at my phone, at the blocked numbers, at the messages I'd deleted, at the absence of the daily photos Daniel used to send of Sophie. 3 weeks ago, I'd gotten pictures every day. Sophie eating breakfast, Sophie at the park, Sophie in the bath making bubble beards. Now, nothing. Wednesday afternoon, I was at the grocery store when I saw her. Bethany in the produce section, Sophie in the shopping cart seat. I froze in the wine aisle, watching them through the shelving. Bethany was talking to Sophie, holding up an apple and an orange, letting Sophie choose. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair in a messy ponytail. But she was smiling at Sophie, patient and gentle. Sophie chose the orange. Bethany kissed her forehead, put 3 oranges in a bag. I should have left, should have turned around and walked out before they saw me. But I couldn't move. I stood there watching my granddaughter, memorizing her face, the way her little hands grabbed at the fruit, the way she laughed when Bethany made funny faces. Then Sophie's head turned. She saw me. Her face lit up with recognition. "Gamma!" she shrieked. "Gamma!" Bethany's head whipped around. Our eyes met across 20 feet of grocery store. Her face went white, then red, then white again. She grabbed the shopping cart handle like she needed it for support. Sophie was reaching for me now, little arms outstretched, still calling, "Gamma, Gamma." Other shoppers were turning to look, smiling at the cute toddler calling for her grandmother. I should have walked over. Should have said hello. Should have at least waved at my granddaughter who was crying for me now, real tears because I wasn't coming to her. Instead, I turned and walked the other direction. Fast, nearly running. I abandoned my shopping cart in the middle of the wine aisle and walked straight out of the store to my car. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, unable to drive because I was shaking too hard. I could still hear Sophie's voice. "Gamma!" So happy to see me, so heartbroken when I walked away. What was I doing? What had I become? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Bethany must have gotten a new phone or was texting from someone else's. "She cried for you for 10 minutes, asked why Gamma wouldn't come say hi. I told her you were busy. I didn't tell her that you chose cruelty over love. But someday she'll ask, and I won't have a good answer." I stared at the message, typed and deleted 3 different responses, finally settled on, "You asked for space. I'm giving it to you." Her response came immediately. There's a difference between space and abandonment. There's a difference between boundaries and punishment. You know that. I know you know that. I turned my phone off. Thursday, I met with my investment advisor, moved some money around, set up a charitable foundation in Richard's name, $1 million dedicated to business scholarships for underprivileged students. Something good coming from all this money that suddenly felt like a weight around my neck. My advisor asked about Daniel, asked if I'd talk to him about the foundation since he'd be the executor someday. I said I'd tell him later. Didn't mention that Daniel and I weren't speaking. Didn't mention that I'd effectively disinherited his wife. Didn't mention that I'd written a will designed to punish a woman who'd only asked for the most basic respect. Friday evening, I poured a glass of wine and sat in Richard's study. Looked at his portrait, his books, his fountain pen still in the holder. Thought about what Daniel had said. About Richard understanding boundaries. About Richard regretting the time the business had stolen from family. Was that true? Had Richard felt that way? We'd never talked about it. We'd been too busy building the company, making money, creating this empire that was supposed to secure our future. And then he died before we could enjoy any of it. I pulled out my phone, unblocked Daniel's number, stared at the screen for a long time. Then I called. It rang 4 times. He answered. "Mom." "Daniel, My voice broke. "I saw Sophie at the grocery store yesterday. She called for me and I walked away. I walked away from my granddaughter and I don't know why. I don't know what I'm doing anymore." Silence on the other end. Long, heavy silence. Then, quietly, "You're hurting, Mom. We're all hurting. But you're turning your hurt into weapons and you're destroying what's left of this family." "I don't know how to stop," I whispered. "I don't know how to stop being angry. I don't know how to forgive Bethany for that gate. I don't know how to accept that I'm not wanted." "You are wanted," Daniel said, and his voice cracked. "That's the tragedy of all this. You are wanted, Mom. Sophie asks about you every day. Bethany's letter, the one you threw away, it was an olive branch. It was her trying to find a way forward. But you're so convinced that boundaries equal rejection that you can't see when someone's actually reaching out to you." "What did the letter say?" "Read it and find out. I'm sure you can fish it out of whatever trash can you threw it in." He hung up. I went to the kitchen. The trash bag was still there, 3 days of garbage. I pulled it out, dumped it on the floor, and searched through coffee grounds and food scraps until I found the envelope. Bethany's neat handwriting, now stained with something that looked like tomato sauce. I opened it. Inside was a single page, written in the same careful hand. "Dear Vivian, I'm writing this at 3 a.m. because I can't sleep and I need you to understand something. I don't hate you. I have never hated you. I know it feels like I'm pushing you away, like I'm trying to erase you from Daniel's life and Sophie's life. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is that I'm drowning. I work 50, 60-hour weeks with children who sometimes hurt me, who need every ounce of energy I have. I come home to a toddler going through the hardest developmental phase. I'm exhausted every single moment of every single day. And when you show up unannounced, when you reorganize my kitchen or criticize my choices or override my decisions about Sophie, it feels like I'm failing. It feels like you're showing me all the ways I'm not good enough. I know that's not your intention. I know you love your son and your granddaughter, but I need you to understand that boundaries aren't rejection. They're survival. They're me trying to be a good mother, a good wife, a good therapist, and still remain sane. I'm sorry I yelled at you. I'm sorry I locked that gate. I was at my breaking point, and I handled it badly. But please understand that when I ask for space, I'm not asking you to disappear forever. I'm asking for 1 day a week where I don't have to be on, where I can be messy and imperfect and not feel judged. Can we start over? Can we try to find a middle ground where you're part of our lives, but I'm still allowed to be the mother in my own home? Sophie loves you. Daniel loves you. And despite everything, I don't want you out of our lives. I just want to breathe. Please, Bethany. I read it 3 times. Sat on my kitchen floor surrounded by garbage, reading my daughter-in-law's plea for understanding. And finally, I let myself cry. Not the angry tears from the car after the gate incident, not the frustrated tears from months of feeling rejected. These were different tears. These were tears of recognition, of shame, of understanding what I'd done and who I'd become. I'd turned love into control. I'd turned fear of loneliness into weapons. I'd hurt people who only wanted to set reasonable limits. And worst of all, I'd abandoned a terrified child on a highway because my pride was more important than her safety. What had I become? When had I become this person? The answer was simple and devastating. I'd become this person the moment Richard died, and I'd decided that Daniel was all I had left. I'd become this person when I couldn't face the emptiness of my life, so I'd tried to fill it by force, by flooding Daniel's life with my presence until he had no room left to breathe. I'd become my worst self, and I had no idea how to find my way back. I sat on that kitchen floor for over an hour, Bethany's letter in my hands, garbage scattered around me like evidence of all the things I'd thrown away without looking at properly. The tomato sauce stain had bled through the paper, making some of her words blurry, but I could read every line. I'd memorized them already. Boundaries aren't rejection, they're survival. How had I not seen that? How had I turned an exhausted young mother's desperate plea for space into a personal attack? I thought about Bethany's face that day at the gate, really thought about it for the first time. She hadn't looked angry. Not really. She'd looked like someone who was about to shatter into 1,000 pieces and was using anger as the only glue holding her together. I pulled myself up off the floor, legs stiff from sitting so long, looked at the clock. 9:37 p.m. on Friday night. Too late to call, too late to show up at their door, too late for a lot of things maybe. But I could start cleaning up my mess, literally and figuratively. I spent the next 20 minutes putting garbage back in the bag, scrubbing the floor where coffee grounds had stained the tile. Then I sat at the kitchen table with Bethany's letter spread out in front of me and a blank piece of my own stationery. Started writing. Dear Bethany, I stopped, crossed it out, started again. Bethany, I read your letter. I fished it out of the trash where I'd thrown it without reading it, which tells you everything you need to know about the person I've become. I'm writing this because I need to say things I should have said months ago, maybe years ago. I'm writing this because I saw Sophie at the grocery store and walked away from her, and that moment showed me what I've turned into. My hand was shaking. I paused, took a breath, continued. You were right about everything. About the boundaries, about the drowning, about me turning love into control. When Richard died, I lost the person I'd built my entire adult life around. We worked together, lived together, dreamed together for 33 years. When he was gone, there was this hole in my life so massive I couldn't see around it. And instead of learning to live with that hole, instead of finding ways to fill it that didn't involve consuming my son's life, I tried to pour myself into Daniel's family until there was no room left for anyone else. I made you feel inadequate in your own home. I made you feel judged and invaded and suffocated. I turned Daniel into a battlefield where he had to choose between his mother and his wife every single day. And when you finally, desperately set a boundary, I punished you for it in the cruelest way I could imagine. I left my granddaughter crying on a dark highway because my pride mattered more than her safety. There's no excuse for that. There's no justification. It was wrong. It was evil, actually. And I'm so sorry. I had to stop. The tears were making it hard to see the page. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to let me back into your lives. But I need you to know that I finally understand what I've done. I understand that when you asked for space, you weren't rejecting me. You were trying to survive. You were trying to be a good mother and wife while working a job that depletes you emotionally and physically, and I made it harder. I made everything harder because I couldn't face my own loneliness. I'm sorry for the gate. I'm sorry for leaving you stranded. I'm sorry for every time I showed up unannounced, every time I criticized, every time I made you feel like you weren't enough. You are enough. You've always been enough. I was the one who wasn't enough, who couldn't fill the hole Richard left, who tried to use your family to patch my broken life. I'm going to give you the space you asked for. Real space, not the punishing silence I've been using as a weapon. I'm going to work on becoming the kind of person who deserves to be part of Sophie's life, instead of the kind who walks away from her in grocery stores. I love you all. I'm sorry I showed it so poorly. Vivian. I folded the letter, put it in an envelope. Didn't seal it yet. I'd read it again in the morning when my head was clearer, make sure it said what I needed it to say. Then I did something I hadn't done in 6 years. I called my therapist, Dr. Sarah Morrison had helped me through the first year after Richard's death. We'd worked together weekly for 6 months, then monthly for another 6. Then I'd stopped going because I'd convinced myself I was fine. That was 3 years ago. I left a message on her emergency line. Dr. Morrison, this is Vivian Marlowe. I know it's been 3 years since my last appointment. I know it's late on a Friday night, but I need help. I've done something terrible and I need help understanding why and how to fix it. Please call me back. She called back within 15 minutes. Her voice was professionally calm, not surprised or annoyed despite the late hour. Vivian, tell me what happened. I told her everything. The gate, the phone call, Sophie crying, me hanging up and blocking the numbers, walking away from my granddaughter in the grocery store, Bethany's letter that I'd thrown away unread, the will I'd changed to punish my daughter-in-law. All of it came pouring out in a confused rush that probably didn't make complete sense. But Dr. Morrison listened without interrupting until I ran out of words. Then she was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. Vivian, what you're describing sounds like complicated grief that's been left unprocessed and has morphed into something destructive. When you lost Richard, you lost your identity as part of a partnership. You've been trying to recreate that partnership dynamic with Daniel, but he's your son, not your husband. He can't fill that role. And when Bethany tried to set healthy boundaries, you experienced it as another loss, another abandonment. So you retaliated. I know, I whispered. I know that now. But how do I fix it? How do I stop being this person? Can you come in tomorrow, Saturday, 9 a.m.? I'll clear my morning. Yes, thank you, yes. Vivian, one more thing. What you did, leaving them on that highway, that's serious. That's a level of retaliation that suggests you're in real crisis. Before tomorrow, I need you to promise me you'll do 2 things. First, send that apology letter to Bethany tonight. Don't wait until morning to second-guess it. Send it now. Second, unblock their phone numbers. You don't have to call them, but unblock them so if there's an emergency, they can reach you. Okay, I can do that. And Vivian, this can be fixed. Not easily and not quickly, but it can be fixed. You've taken the first step, which is recognizing what you've done. That's harder than you think. Most people never get there. After we hung up, I sealed the letter without rereading it, drove to Daniel's house, and left it in their mailbox. It was nearly 11 p.m. The house was dark except for one upstairs window. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at that light, wondering who was awake. Daniel, probably, working on some project. Or maybe Bethany, unable to sleep because of everything I'd put her through. I wanted to ring the doorbell, wanted to apologize in person. But Dr. Morrison's words echoed in my head. Real space, not punishing silence. Space meant letting them read the letter on their own time, respond on their own terms, or not respond at all if that's what they needed. I got back in my car and drove home. Saturday morning, I sat in Dr. Morrison's office for the first time in 3 years. It looked exactly the same. Same comfortable chairs, same abstract art on the walls, same box of tissues on the side table that I'd gone through so many times in those months after Richard died. Tell me about the 6 years since Richard passed, Dr. Morrison said. Not the surface story, the real story. How have you been filling your days? What does your life look like? And that's when I realized the truth. My life looked like nothing. I had money, I had a beautiful house, I had friends I had lunch with occasionally. But I had no purpose, no passion, no identity beyond being Daniel's mother and Sophie's grandmother. The consulting business was gone, sold off. Richard was gone, buried. And I'd been floating through my days like a ghost, trying to grab onto Daniel's life because I didn't have one of my own anymore. I don't know who I am without Richard, I said. We were married for 33 years. We built a business together. Every decision, every plan, every dream was we, not I. And now there's just I, and I don't know who that person is supposed to be. So you tried to become we with Daniel instead? Yes. It was such a relief to say it out loud. Yes, exactly that. Dr. Morrison leaned forward slightly. Here's what we're going to work on, Vivian. We're going to help you find out who you are as an individual, not as someone's wife or someone's mother. We're going to help you build a life that's full enough that you don't need to overflow into other people's lives. And we're going to help you understand what healthy family relationships look like. Because right now, you only know how to love through enmeshment. Are you ready for that work? I thought about Sophie's face in the grocery store, about Bethany's exhausted plea for understanding, about Daniel's voice breaking when he asked why I'd become so cruel. Yes, I said, I'm ready. I didn't hear anything for 4 days. 4 days of sitting with my phone nearby, checking it constantly, wondering if they'd gotten the letter, if they'd read it, if it mattered at all. Dr. Morrison and I met twice more that week, Tuesday and Thursday. We talked about grief, about identity, about the difference between connection and control. She gave me homework. Write down 3 things every day that I did just for myself, not connected to Daniel or Sophie or anyone else. Find one activity that had nothing to do with being a mother or grandmother. Tuesday I went to a pottery class. Felt ridiculous at first, sitting with a bunch of 20-somethings trying to center clay on a wheel. My first 3 attempts collapsed into muddy lumps. But the fourth one started to take shape. A bowl. Crooked and imperfect, but mine. I made it. Me, Vivian, not Richard's wife or Daniel's mother, just me. Wednesday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. My heart jumped. I answered. Mrs. Marlowe. A woman's voice I didn't recognize. This is Carol Chen, Bethany's mother. Do you speak? My English not so good, but I need talk to you. Yes, Mrs. Chen, I speak English. I understand you. Good, good. She paused. I could hear her breathing, like she was gathering courage. Bethany, she cry a lot. 4 days she cry. She show me your letter. She say she don't know what to do. She want forgive you, but she scared. Scared you hurt her again. Hurt Sophie again. My chest tightened. Mrs. Chen, I understand. I don't expect— No, you listen. Her voice was firmer now. I come to this country with nothing. Work in laundry 40 years. My hands, they hurt every day from hot water, from chemicals. My husband, he died 5 years ago. Heart attack, like your husband. I know what is alone. I know what is to lose the person you build life with. She paused again. I waited, not sure where this was going. But I never use my alone to hurt my daughter. I never make my pain into her pain, you understand? When you lonely, when you sad, is not excuse to hurt other people. My Bethany, she is good girl. She works so hard. She take care of children who nobody else want to take care of. Special needs children, difficult children. She come home tired, so tired her hands shake. And she's still good mother to Sophie, still good wife to Daniel. She tries so hard to make everyone happy. But she cannot make you happy because you want something she cannot give. I know, I whispered. I know that now. Your letter, it say you sorry. Words are easy. You know what is not easy? Change. You going to change? You going to become different person? Or you write pretty words and then go back to same behavior? It was a fair question. The fairest question anyone had asked me. I'm in therapy, I said. Twice a week. I'm working on it. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did, why I couldn't accept boundaries, why I turned love into something controlling and destructive. I'm trying to change. I can't promise I'll get it right immediately. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. But I'm trying. Silence on the other end. Then, okay, I tell Bethany, but Mrs. Marlowe, if you hurt my daughter again, if you hurt my granddaughter again, I don't care how much money you have, how big your house is, I will make sure you never see them. You understand? Mother to mother, I tell you this. No more chances after this. I understand. Good. I call you next week. We talk more. She hung up. I sat staring at my phone. Carol Chen, this woman who'd worked in a laundry for 40 years, who'd lost her husband just like I'd lost mine, who'd come to this country with nothing and built a life through sheer determination, had just read me like a book. And she was right. Words were easy. Change was hard. Friday afternoon, my phone rang again. This time it was Daniel. Mom. His voice was careful, neutral. Bethany and I talked. We read your letter. We've been discussing it for days, actually. We almost called you a dozen times but kept stopping because we weren't sure what to say. I understand. You don't have to. Let me finish. He took a breath. We want to try. We want to see if this can be fixed, but we need conditions, real ones, non-negotiable ones. Okay. My heart was pounding. Tell me. First, therapy. You mentioned you're going. You need to keep going. For at least 6 months, maybe longer. We need to know you're actually working on this, not just saying you are. I will. I am. I meet with Dr. Morrison twice a week. Good. Second, visits. 1 scheduled visit per week. You call at least 48 hours in advance, you ask if the time works for us, and if we say no, you accept it without argument or guilt trips. No showing up unannounced. Ever. If you show up unannounced even once, we're done. Understood. Third, parenting decisions. Sophie is our daughter. Bethany and I make the decisions about her clothing, her food, her toys, her activities, her everything. You can offer opinions if we ask for them, but you don't override our choices. You don't buy gifts we've said no to. You don't criticize our parenting. This is non-negotiable. Yes, okay. Fourth, Bethany's boundaries. When she says she needs space, she means it. When she says she's tired, she's not being dramatic. When she asks you to leave, you leave. Immediately, without making her feel guilty about it. I will. I promise. And fifth, his voice softened slightly. You need to build a life outside of us. You need friends, activities, purposes that have nothing to do with being my mother or Sophie's grandmother. Because, Mom, we can't be your whole world. It's not fair to us, and it's not healthy for you. We love you, but we can't carry the weight of being your only source of happiness. Tears were running down my face. I'm working on that too. I joined a pottery class. I'm volunteering at the hospital starting next week. I'm trying to figure out who I am now, without your father, without making you responsible for filling that void. Silence. Then Daniel's voice came back, rougher now, like he was crying too. Okay, then here's what we're proposing. Tomorrow, Saturday, 2 p.m., you come to our house. We sit down, the 3 of us, and we talk. Really talk. About what happened, about how to move forward, about what this new relationship is going to look like. And if that goes well, if we can all get through that conversation, then Sunday morning you can see Sophie. Supervised visit, Bethany and I will be there, but you can see her. What do you think? Yes. I was sobbing now, couldn't help it. Yes. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you both. I'll be there. 2 p.m. I won't be late. Mom? His voice cracked. I need you to understand something. This is the last chance. There won't be another one. If you blow this, if you go back to the old patterns, we're done. Permanently. No more calls, no more visits, no more relationship. I will protect my wife and my daughter, even if it means cutting you out completely. Do you understand? I understand. I won't blow it. I promise. Saturday at 1:45, I pulled up in front of Daniel's house. The same house where Bethany had locked the gate 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks that felt like 3 years. I sat in my car for a few minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, breathing like Dr. Morrison had taught me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, managing anxiety, managing fear. At exactly 2 p.m., I walked up to the door and rang the bell. No birthday cake this time, no expensive gifts. Just me and an apology I hoped was enough. Daniel opened the door. He looked tired but not hostile. "Mom, come in." The living room looked different somehow. Then I realized it was the same, but I was seeing it differently. Before, I'd looked at this room and seen all the things that were wrong. The furniture was too cheap, the paint color was bland, the toys scattered across the floor were clutter. Now, I saw it for what it actually was. A home. Not perfect, not decorated by an interior designer, but filled with love and life and the beautiful mess of a family building their life together. Bethany was sitting on the couch, hands folded in her lap. She looked even more tired than Daniel. The dark circles under her eyes had deepened. She'd lost weight. I'd done that to her. My behavior, my refusal to see her humanity, had physically depleted this woman. "Hi, Bethany," I said quietly. "Thank you for giving me this chance." She nodded but didn't smile. Daniel sat next to her, took her hand. They presented a united front. As they should. I sat in the chair across from them, keeping distance between us, letting them control the space. "I read your letter 3 times, Bethany said. Her voice was steady but soft. "I showed it to my therapist. I showed it to my mother. I showed it to Daniel. Everyone had different opinions about what I should do. My therapist said I needed to protect myself first. My mother said family is complicated and forgiveness is important, but trust has to be earned. Daniel said it was my decision, that he'd support whatever I chose." She paused, looked at her hands. "I've been so angry at you, Vivian. So angry I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake replaying every interaction, every time you made me feel inadequate, every boundary you violated. And then I'd get to that night on the highway, and the anger would turn into something else. Something that felt like fear. Because if you could abandon Sophie when she was crying for help, what else were you capable of?" "Nothing," I said, and my voice broke. "I'm not capable of anything else like that. That night was the worst thing I've ever done. The worst person I've ever been. And I'm so sorry, Bethany. I'm so desperately sorry." "But why?" She looked up at me now, eyes red-rimmed. "Why did you do it? That's what I can't understand. How do you love someone so much that you show up at their house 4 times a week, but then abandon them when they actually need you? How do those 2 things exist in the same person?" This was it, the real question. The one I'd been working through with Dr. Morrison all week. "Because I wasn't showing up out of love," I said slowly. "I thought I was, but I wasn't. I was showing up out of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of Richard's death, meaning my life was over too. And when you set boundaries, when you told me I couldn't come whenever I wanted, it felt like you were confirming my worst fear, that I wasn't needed, that I didn't matter. So I punished you for it. I made you feel what I was feeling. Abandoned, rejected, alone on a dark road with no one coming to help." Bethany's eyes filled with tears. "That's exactly what it felt like you wanted me to feel what you felt." "I did, and it was cruel and wrong, and I will regret it for the rest of my life." I leaned forward slightly. "But Bethany, I need you to understand something. My behavior wasn't about you. It was never about you not being good enough or me not respecting you. It was about me being so broken that I turned my brokenness into a weapon. And you and Daniel and Sophie got hurt because I couldn't face my own grief." Daniel spoke up then. "Mom's been seeing a therapist twice a week. She's working on it. She's joined a pottery class and signed up to volunteer at the hospital. She's trying to build a life that doesn't revolve around us. Bethany looked at him, then back at me. Pottery? I made a bowl. I pulled out my phone, showed her a picture of the lopsided, imperfect bowl I'd made on Tuesday. It's terrible. It wobbles when you set it down. But I made it myself. Just me, not trying to be anything to anyone, just learning something new. She stared at the picture for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. Not a mean laugh, but a real one. It really is terrible. I know. I laughed too, just a little. But it's mine. The tension in the room shifted slightly. Not gone, but lighter. Bethany took a breath. Okay. Here's what I need from you. I need you to understand that I'm not your enemy. Because I just need one day to sit in my messy house in my pajamas without having to be presentable. And when I say no, it's not personal. It's self-care. I understand, and I'll accept it. No arguments, no guilt trips. And I need you to understand that Daniel and I are going to make mistakes as parents. We're going to dress Sophie in clothes that don't match. We're going to let her eat chicken nuggets sometimes instead of organic vegetables. We're going to forget to brush her teeth one night because we're too exhausted. And you can't judge us for it. You can't make us feel like we're failing. You're not failing. My voice was firm. You're doing an incredible job, both of you. Sophie is happy and healthy and so loved. I'm the one who failed. I failed to see what you were accomplishing because I was too busy trying to control everything. Bethany was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Daniel pulled her closer, kissed the top of her head. I want to forgive you, she whispered. I want to move past this, but I'm scared. I'm scared that you'll be good for a few weeks and then go back to the old patterns. I'm scared that I'll let you back in and you'll hurt us again. I'm scared that Sophie will get attached and then you'll do something that forces us to cut you off and she'll be the one who gets hurt. I'm scared too, I admitted. I'm scared I'll mess up. I'm scared I've damaged this relationship beyond repair. But Bethany, I swear to you, I'm doing the work. I'm showing up to therapy. I'm building my own life. I'm learning what healthy boundaries look like. And if I start slipping back into old patterns, I want you to call me on it immediately. Don't let it build up. Just tell me, and I'll course correct. She wiped her eyes, looked at Daniel. He nodded slightly, giving her permission to decide. Okay, she said finally. 1 visit a week, scheduled in advance. You follow our parenting rules. You respect when we say no. And the first time you violate any of this, we take a break. A real break, maybe a month or 2, to reassess. Agreed? Agreed, completely. And one more thing. She looked directly at me. You apologized to Sophie. She's 2, she won't really understand. But she asked about you yesterday. She said, Gamma mad at Sophie? She thinks she did something wrong. So tomorrow, when you see her, you make it clear that none of this was her fault. You make her feel loved and safe. Can you do that? My throat closed up. Sophie thought she'd done something wrong. My beautiful granddaughter thought she was the reason I'd stayed away. Yes, I will. I promise. Daniel stood up. I think we're done for now. This is a good start. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., you can come over for an hour. We'll have breakfast together, low-key, just family time. And then we'll see how it goes from there. I stood too. Wanted to hug them both, but wasn't sure if I was allowed. Bethany stood, hesitated, then opened her arms. I stepped into them, and we held each other while we both cried. Daniel wrapped his arms around both of us, and for a moment, we were a family again. Damaged, working through trauma, but together. Thank you, I whispered into Bethany's shoulder. Thank you for giving me another chance. I won't waste it. You'd better not, she said, but there was a tiny hint of warmth in her voice, because Carol Chen will actually kill you if you hurt us again, and she's scarier than she looks. I laughed, pulled back. I met her, I know. As I drove home that afternoon, the sun setting behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Not certainty, not confidence that everything would magically be fixed, but hope. Hope that I could change. Hope that I could learn to love without controlling. Hope that my family might still want me in their lives if I could just learn to be present without being overwhelming. That night, I sat in Richard's study one more time, looked at his portrait, his books, his fountain pen. I think I'm going to be okay, I told the empty room. I think I'm going to figure out who Vivian Marlowe is now. Not your wife, not just Daniel's mother, but me, whoever that turns out to be. The room stayed quiet, but somehow the silence felt less lonely than it had in 6 years. Sunday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m., even though I didn't need to be at Daniel's house until 10. I couldn't sleep. Anxiety and anticipation kept me staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what I'd say to Sophie, how I'd behave, reminding myself of all the boundaries I'd promised to respect. I got dressed carefully. Not the designer clothes I usually wore to visit them, the ones that screamed, "I have money and you don't." Just simple jeans and a soft blue sweater. Comfortable, approachable. Like a grandmother, not like someone trying to prove something. At 9:45, I pulled up outside their house, sat in the car for a few minutes, breathing. Dr. Morrison's techniques. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. This was just breakfast. Just 1 hour. I could do this. At exactly 10 a.m., I rang the doorbell. Daniel answered, Sophie in his arms. She was wearing mismatched pajamas, purple top with pandas and green bottoms with trucks. Her hair was messy, sticking up in every direction. She looked perfect. "Gamma!" She reached for me immediately. No hesitation, no memory of the grocery store rejection. 2-year-olds are like that. Resilient in ways adults forget how to be. I took her in my arms, buried my face in her little neck, breathed in that baby shampoo smell. "Hi, sweetheart. I missed you so much." "Missed you?" She patted my cheeks with her small hands. "Gamma come play?" "Yes, baby. Gamma came to play. And to have breakfast with you." Daniel led me to the kitchen. Bethany was at the stove making pancakes. The kitchen was messy, dishes in the sink, toys on the floor, exactly the kind of chaos I used to immediately start cleaning up. Now I saw it differently. This was life. This was a family living their morning, not staging a performance for me. "Good morning, Vivienne." Bethany turned from the stove, gave me a small smile. It wasn't the warm smile of 6 months ago before everything fell apart, but it wasn't hostile either. It was careful, tentative, a beginning. "Good morning. Can I help with anything?" "You can set the table if you want. Plates are in that cabinet." I set Sophie down, and she immediately ran to her toy box. I found the plates, mismatched ones, not the expensive set I'd bought them for their first anniversary that they'd clearly stored somewhere and never used. I set 4 places, found forks and napkins, moved slowly and carefully like I was a guest in someone's home. Which I was, I realized. This wasn't my kitchen. This wasn't my house. I was a guest, and guests ask before touching things. Breakfast was surprisingly easy. Sophie chattered about her daycare friends, about a cat she'd seen in the yard, about how she wanted a puppy, but Mama said not yet. Daniel and Bethany listened to her with the kind of patient attention I'd forgotten parents need to have, letting her rambling story go wherever it wanted without rushing her. I listened too, just listened, fighting the urge to correct her grammar or interrupt with advice about child development. Dr. Morrison's voice in my head. Connection, not control. Presence, not performance. After breakfast, Sophie wanted to show me her room. Daniel and Bethany exchanged a glance, then nodded. 15 minutes, Bethany said gently. Then Gamma needs to go home so we can get ready for the day. Okay, Mama. Sophie grabbed my hand, pulled me upstairs. Her room was small, painted pale yellow, filled with toys that were mostly not the expensive ones I'd bought. There were books on the floor, stuffed animals on the bed, drawings taped to the walls. It was messy and chaotic and absolutely beautiful. Sophie showed me everything. Her favorite doll, the one missing an arm that I'd wanted to replace but they'd said no. This is Emma. She got hurt, but she's okay now. Mama fixed her with tape. The stuffed elephant I'd given her for her first birthday. Ellie sleeps with me every night. A drawing she'd made at daycare, just scribbles in crayon. This is you, Gamma. See? That's your smile. I looked at the drawing, at the purple and green scribbles that supposedly represented me, and felt tears starting. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can I keep it? Yes, for your house. I sat on her small bed, and she climbed into my lap. We sat like that for a few minutes, quiet, just being together. No agenda, no performance, no trying to prove anything. Just a grandmother and granddaughter existing in the same space. Gamma, her little voice was thoughtful. Why you not come see Sophie? There it was, the question Bethany had warned me about. I chose my words carefully. Gamma made some mistakes, sweetheart. I wasn't being a very good Gamma. So I needed some time to learn how to be better. But it was never, ever because of you. You didn't do anything wrong. Gamma just needed to learn some things. You learned now? I'm learning. I'm going to keep learning. But yes, I think I understand better now. Okay. She hugged me tighter. I love you, Gamma. I love you too, baby. So, so much. Daniel appeared in the doorway. Time's up, Mom. Sophie needs to get dressed. I kissed Sophie's forehead, set her down. I'll see you next week, okay? Next week? She waved as I followed Daniel downstairs. Bethany was loading the dishwasher. I grabbed my purse from the chair, hesitated. Thank you for this morning, for letting me see her. I know it's not easy for you to trust me right now. She straightened up, wiped her hands on a towel. It's not, but we're trying. You showed up on time, you didn't overstay, you didn't criticize anything or try to change anything. That's a good start. I'll keep it up, I promise. We'll see. But her voice wasn't mean, just honest. Call me Wednesday to schedule next week's visit? I will. Wednesday morning. As I drove home, I realized something had shifted. Not everything was fixed. The damage I'd caused would take months, maybe years, to fully repair. But we'd taken a step, a real step, and I hadn't tried to rush it or control it or make it more than it was. That afternoon, I went to my pottery class, made another bowl, slightly less lopsided than the first one. The instructor, a woman in her 30s with paint-stained hands, complimented my improvement. You're getting the feel for it. Keep practicing. Tuesday, I started volunteering at the hospital. 3 hours in the children's ward, reading stories to kids whose parents couldn't be there. It was hard, seeing sick children, but it was also fulfilling in a way I hadn't expected. I was helping, not because I was trying to prove something or fill a void, but just because I could. Wednesday morning, I called Bethany at 9 a.m. She answered on the third ring. Hi, Vivienne. Hi, I'm calling to schedule next week's visit, like we discussed. Right, okay. How about Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m.? We're having a little birthday party for one of Sophie's daycare friends, and Sophie asked if Gamma could come. My heart jumped. Sophie had asked for me. That would be wonderful. Should I bring anything? Just yourself. Well, actually, can you bring a fruit tray? I'm handling the cake and drinks, but I forgot about fruit. Of course, I'll bring a fruit tray. Nothing fancy, just fruit. Perfect. See you Saturday. It was such a normal conversation, such a mundane exchange about fruit trays and toddler birthday parties. But it felt like everything. 3 months passed, 12 weekly visits, scheduled in advance, always on time, always respecting the 1-hour limit unless they specifically invited me to stay longer. I met Bethany for coffee twice, just the two of us. Awkward conversations that slowly became less awkward. We weren't friends, not yet, maybe not ever. But we were finding a way to coexist in the same family. Daniel and I talked on the phone every Sunday evening, short calls where he'd update me about his work, and I'd tell him about my pottery progress or the kids I'd read to at the hospital. Normal parent-child conversations, not the intense emotional exchanges we used to have where I'd make him responsible for my happiness. Dr. Morrison and I were down to once a week now. We talked about identity, about building a life that felt meaningful without being dependent on others for validation. She helped me understand that Richard's death hadn't ended my life. It had just ended one chapter. I was writing a new one now, slowly, imperfectly, but mine. I sold the big house. 5 bedrooms for one person was ridiculous. Bought a smaller condo, 2 bedrooms, modern and bright, near enough to Daniel to visit easily, but not so close that I'd be tempted to just drop by. 1 bedroom for me, 1 for Sophie when she was old enough to have sleepovers. Someday, if I earned that privilege. 6 months after that morning at the gate, we were all at Daniel's house for Christmas. I'd brought gifts, but I'd cleared every single one with Bethany first. A wooden puzzle for Sophie, a gift card for Daniel and Bethany to their favorite restaurant. Nothing excessive, nothing controlling, just thoughtful presents from a family member who was learning to be part of a family instead of trying to run it. Sophie was opening presents, tearing through wrapping paper with the pure joy only a 2.5-year-old can manage. Bethany sat next to her, patient and present. Daniel was taking pictures, and I sat on the couch, watching, feeling something I hadn't felt in 6 years. Content. Not frantically happy, not desperately trying to manufacture perfect moments. Just content. Present. Part of something without needing to control it. Bethany caught my eye across the room and smiled. A real smile this time, not careful or tentative, just warm. Then she mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Thank you for changing. Thank you for trying. Thank you for becoming someone we could trust again. I nodded, smiled back, felt tears prickling, but didn't let them fall. This was a happy moment. I didn't need to make it about my emotions. That night, driving home to my new condo, I thought about that gate, that moment when Bethany had locked it, and I'd walked away feeling rejected and alone and so angry I could barely breathe. I'd thought that gate was closing me out, ending something. But now I understood it differently. That gate had needed to close so I could finally learn what it meant to be invited in. Not as someone who demanded entry, not as someone who forced their way into spaces they weren't wanted, but as someone who waited to be welcomed. Someone who earned the privilege of presence through respect and boundaries and love that didn't try to consume everything it touched. The gate had closed. And then, slowly, carefully, on terms that protected everyone involved, it had opened again. I was learning to be the kind of grandmother, the kind of mother, the kind of person who deserved to walk through that open gate. And for the first time in 6 years, I was learning to be just Vivian, not Richard's widow. Not Daniel's overbearing mother, just me. Flawed, working on it, making lopsided bowls and reading to sick children and showing up for scheduled visits and respecting when people said no. Just me. And finally, that felt like enough.